All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores. I know I'm a little late on this, but I could not pass up on the opportunity to break down the Washington Commanders signing wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus. Again, I've been really busy the past couple of days, but I had to make sure I got this video to y'all. Of course, we're going to talk about when was his best season, what was he like the most recent season last year with the Eagles. We're going to talk about where he fits on this roster. Is he actually going to be like a strong contributor, or is he just a camp body? And are Eagles fans upset about losing him to the Commanders? And then also I want to give y'all some major updates from the Washington Commanders themselves. They gave us our early off-season workout dates, which is very interesting. Mandatory mini camps, all of the voluntary mini camps, all of that type of stuff. And you'll be surprised, a couple of these dates are before the draft even happens. Also, they are announcing a big time draft party again, just like they did last year. That was a huge success, and I'm gonna let you know about all of those details as well. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I'm keeping y'all updated on everything going on. I'm super excited. So many things to talk about. Again, on the way is a cap space update, all of that. I have a big quarterback update as well. Stay tuned for that. I know y'all love those. And let's go ahead and dive into this video instead of me wasting more of y'all time. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so first of all, I saw it from Tom Pelissero first, and for some reason he spelled his name incorrectly in his tweet, and it's still, even after I just refreshed it, it's still spelled incorrectly. But either way, veteran wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus agrees to terms with the Washington Commanders. And he's 26 years old, went undrafted to the Atlanta Falcons in 2019, which is why his name kind of irks me a little bit. Like, when I hear his name, I just think Atlanta Falcons, which automatically upsets me. But I'm hopeful that he can come here and get a little bit of that Falcon stench off of him. Maybe he got a little bit off of him after going to the Eagles, because he was with the Atlanta Falcons for 4 years before going to the Eagles last year. But I don't know, man, 4 years worth of stink. I don't know if the Eagles could get all of that off of him just within one season. Either way, though, in 72 career games, 24 starts, Zaccheaus has caught 104 receptions for 1,492 yards and 10 touchdowns. A pretty decent career. And he had a career-high 40 receptions and 533 yards in 2022. And also, I'm not sure if a lot of y'all know this, but he's only 5'8", so he's like a super small but speed demon type of guy. Maybe he's coming here to potentially be a returner for us. You never know. But that 2022 season was his most productive year, arguably by far. I mean, again, 40 receptions, 533 yards in 2022. His final season with the Falcons before he went to the Eagles, easily his best year of his career. So, of course, the question is, can we get that out of him again? Because last year for the Philadelphia Eagles, he only had 10 catches for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, they do have Devonta Smith, they do have A.J. Brown, but if he was worth anything, they still would have found a way to target him. And with him being such a small, shifty, fast guy, I feel like he could have played a role there. I'm surprised that the Eagles didn't utilize him more than they did. But either way, going back to his best season, which was 2022, I want to see what he may have the realistic potential to be if we get the most out of him. That's why I want to focus more so on his 2022 season. And in this 2022 season, he had a 64.6 grade with a 67.4 receiving grade, an 82.3 drop grade, which means that he caught everything thrown towards him. But then he had a 30 fumble grade. And so I was like, what do you mean by 30 fumble? Like, I had to go look it up. Like, why was his fumble grade just abysmal? Like, is like just straight up atrocious. And when I looked it up, he only had 1 fumble the entire season, and it was the very first game of the season. And that's why you also have to kind of do your own research when it comes to these things and not take Pro Football Focus grades as pure gospel and just 100% truth, because in that season he had at least 2 receptions in every game outside of just 4 of them. He had the ball in his hands more games than he did it, and yet he still only had 1 fumble. So I don't know why they gave him such a horrible fumble grade, like it's just a bad habit or a pattern. Again, he only had 1. which is just crazy. And looking at his grades throughout his career, I mean, the first year that he went to the Falcons, he only had 4 targets and 3 receptions, but that was his highest graded year with a 71.5. I guess Pro Football Focus went into his career very optimistic. Then his second year, he had 30 targets and 20 receptions with a 68.6 grade, and then the grade just continues to go down. 2021, 51 targets, 31 receptions for a 63.4 grade. And then again, his most notable season where he had his most targets and his most receptions, 2022 for the Falcons, 61 targets, 40 receptions, and 533 yards and 13.3 yards per reception, which is not bad at all. He's like a big playmaker when he does get the ball. He just doesn't get it often. And after watching a little bit of his Eagles tape from last year, but a lot of his Falcons tape from 2022 when he had his best season, I completely agree with my dog Let Malls Tell It overall assessment of Olamide. Make sure you follow Jamal at Let Maul Tell It. Make sure you follow his Trap or Dive podcast on YouTube and everything. I completely agree with his assessment for him. Solid receiver, a rotational guy that can line up outside and in the slot, so pretty versatile. Good hands, solid route runner, and strong asset in the run game as well. So first of all, I completely agree with that. I would not be surprised if he actually finds a way to stick around and end up making this 53-man roster. I know this isn't necessarily the most exciting signing, but I think he will at least stick around and going into the regular season just with his veteran presence alone. But I feel like easily, though, he's wide receiver 4 at very best right now. Like the highest capability possible, he's wide receiver 4 in my opinion. So don't get it confused. Don't think that we just signed this star player or anything. And that's before the draft. By the time the draft ends, we bring in some undrafted free agents as well. And you never know, man. We've been signing guys left and right. You never know when you're going to wake up to a new signing notification. We may end up bringing in another receiver that ends up forcing him further down the depth chart. So right now, at very best, he's wide receiver 1 at his highest ceiling. Even if you're projecting him to be 2022 version of Olamide rather than this past 2023 season version of Olamide. I mean, at the very best, and again, we still have the draft and so many other things. He's probably going to end up further down than that, but I still feel like he may make the 53-man roster. But at the end of the day, no matter what, this is just another potential weapon for a quarterback that we're going to end up drafting number 2 overall, whether it be Jayden Daniels, Drake May, maybe some other mystery guy, who knows. And, you know, at least he did something right. When you sign somebody and his previous team fans are upset about him leaving. You have Eagles fans on Twitter saying yesterday after he signed, I saw no RIP OZ, Eagles legend. I saw another Eagles fan in all caps say, why didn't we bring him back? I mean, they're actually pretty upset about this. I saw somebody complaining and comparing him to other Eagles receivers. He said Howie would rather sign Washed, Devontae Parker, and Paris Campbell over Zaccheaus. So Eagles fans are actually pretty upset about losing them to the Commanders. So even though I'm not the biggest Olamide Zaccheaus fan, if the Eagles are that upset about it, and I'm pretty sure that's not the viewpoint of the entire fan base, but that was just a quick snapshot, just me scrolling down Tom Pelissero's replies, and those are like 3 of like the first 5 replies I saw. So at least a good portion of the Eagles fan base is upset. You know, like I already said, if your rival, your division rival fans are upset about anything, that means you did something right, especially if you're signing a guy taking them from them to come be with you. And of course, there's the connection to Brian Johnson. Remember, Brian Johnson was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles last year, the only year that Olamide was a wide receiver for the Eagles. Maybe that was Brian Johnson's decision to go out there and get him. He saw some potential in him with the Falcons, and then maybe coming here to the Commanders, he's like, man, let me run that back and get him another chance because I feel like he can contribute here. Brian Johnson is not our offensive coordinator here. He doesn't have anywhere near as much power as he had with the Eagles last year, but he is our passing game coordinator and assistant head coach. Basically, as far as not necessarily power wise, he's right under Dan Quinn, but like roles and responsibilities, they're basically putting them in like a future head coach and grooming camp with us. So don't look at assistant head coach for Brian Johnson and assume it's Dan Quinn, then Brian Johnson, then Joe Wood Jr., Cliff Kingsbury. It doesn't go like that at all. They just kind of want to give him the experience of a lot of the behind the scenes things about what it takes to be a head coach, basically literally putting him through a head coach camp so that he could be ready to go become a head coach for somebody else. I'm pretty sure that was part of like the negotiations. If I'm gonna come here and go from being an offensive coordinator to just a passing game coordinator, I need a promise that y'all are going to help me do whatever it takes for me to become a better head coach. So again, I just wanted to make sure I broke that down so you don't think that Brian Johnson is above Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Wood Jr. in the pecking order. But he is our passing game coordinator. Maybe he has enough say to where he was able to convince them to give Olamide Zaccheaus another chance. Bring him here. And also remember, Dan Quinn was the head coach of the Falcons when they brought in Zaccheaus as an undrafted free agent, and he was the head coach for the Falcons for 2 years since Olamide Zaccheaus was there, for the 2019 to 2020 season that Olamide was there. So there's that connection as well. Maybe Dan Quinn recognized him and wanted to bring him in. Either way, there's two strong connections to the Commanders right there. So the signing makes a lot of sense. I wasn't necessarily expecting it to happen. I did not predict this to happen at all. But it makes sense when you really go back and think about it. And we also need receivers. Cliff Kingsbury's offense, I know he tries to fight the air raid label as much as he can, anywhere that he can. But at the end of the day, it's still an air raid system in its very core, in its soul. And that system loves to deploy as many receivers as possible, especially since they like to take as many deep shots as possible. You can't have Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson out here running 70 yards down the field every play and expect them to be able to hold up throughout the game. So we're going to have heavy wide receiver rotations, guys coming in and out far more often, coming in for a couple of plays, sitting on the sideline just to catch a breather real quick, and then coming back, probably more than we've seen as Commanders fans or Burgundy and Gold fans in a while. We're going to be running these guys up and down the field. So basically my point is you need as many quality receivers as you can get, and Olamide is arguably at the very least a decent quality receiver that when he's on the field, you don't feel like he's a liability for your team. So we'll see how that goes. But even crazier, I thought that if there were any day that we would not sign a free agent, I thought it would be yesterday. They were in Louisiana all day Wednesday and then in North Carolina all day yesterday. When did they find the time to evaluate and sign this guy? I felt like literally if there were any day that I was safe from another Commanders signing notification, it was yesterday. And then they still signed somebody. So at this point, I'm bracing myself for a Washington Commanders signing notification every morning at this point, because you never know when we're going to bring somebody else in, man. And then also, before we leave this whole wide receiver talk, because again, we need as many receivers as we could possibly get. And you could argue that receiver is the deepest position group in this entire draft. Like if we're talking about the quality of receivers that will be available in the 4th round compared to any other position group, you can argue that receiver will be the best position group available. That's what I mean by deepest. And then of course, it's also very top heavy. It's just a really, really good receiver group in this draft class. Easily, in my opinion, the deepest group in the draft. I mean, some would probably say quarterback, some would say tackle because there's a lot of good tackles, but nah, it's definitely receiver in my opinion. And so there will be a lot of really good, at worst, decent receiver options in the draft by the time we get to like the 3rd and even 4th round. Remember, we have 1 first, which is going to be spent on quarterback, 2 seconds, and 3 thirds. Before we even get outside of the top 100 picks, I wouldn't be surprised if we take receiver with one of those picks. So if we're looking at maybe 2nd round wise, maybe Adonai Mitchell, ex-Georgia Bulldog, but most recently Texas wide receiver that killed it at the combine. I think he's literally just a more athletic CeeDee Lamb, so I doubt he makes it out of the 1st round, but you never know. Of course, I would love to get my Georgia Bulldog Ladd McConkey, but I feel like even though round 1, just thinking back from just a year ago today, I just never really imagined that people would put a round 1 grade on him, even though I love him as a receiver. But I was always like, maybe I'm just biased. But I see a lot of Victor Cruz in this game. I've seen a lot of people even compare him to Antonio Brown. And my main point is I feel like he won't make it past the Chiefs. Unless like A.D. Mitchell or one of those guys, they prefer one of those guys. I think Ladd McConkey makes too much sense. Everything they wanted Kadarius Toney to be for them with all of them drop passes, Ladd McConkey can literally do all of that very well. And then you also have Xavier Legette. Maybe we can somehow find him in early 3rd, maybe with our second round pick. Maybe you have Xavier Worthy, you have Keon Coleman, who's just a human highlight, but you know, I don't, when you actually really sit down and evaluate his tape, there are a lot of weaknesses to his game. But boy, if you're only watching his highlights, you can convince yourself that, hey man, we draft him, we can make something shake. We can figure it out, especially with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson on one side, teams having a game plan and worry about them, and then how elite this offense is going to be just off of the quarterback that we end up taking. I believe firmly that they're going to fix this offensive line. We're going to address tackle potentially in the draft. I think this offense is going to be really good, and to just add a random playmaker like a Keon Coleman or Xavier Legette to that would just be unfair. And then Malachi Corley, I love him. He's like my baby Deebo Samuel, basically, and kind of like a Curtis Samuel replacement in a way, other than the deep shots, not the deep shot part, but like handing them the ball in the backfield, basically using them as a running back, giving them a lot of screens and things like that. Malachi Corley is that guy. Remember, this guy's almost 6 foot and he's 215 pounds, running people over, loves contact. That's a scary chess piece that you can bring into this offense. And then you have a lot of other receivers that, I mean, Malik Washington, maybe you can get him somewhere like early 4th, maybe late 3rd, maybe with that 100th pick if we want to. You have Javon Baker, you have Brendan Rice, you have Johnny Wilson, Jamari Thrash. I mean, there's a lot of good receiver options. I wanted to make sure that I emphasized and really went at least slightly in depth in some of my favorite options later in the draft, especially like 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round. And you know, as a Georgia Bulldog, I'm a vouch for my boy Marcus Rosemi-Jacksaint. He killed it at the combine. He looked pretty much unguardable there. So, you know, you could probably even get him somewhere in the 5th round potentially. So there's a lot of great options for receivers here. Don't be surprised if we end up not only drafting 1, but maybe even drafting 2 and bringing in a good wave of them as undrafted free agents. I wouldn't be surprised. Also, they went out of their way to re-sign Kazmir Allen as one of their very first moves that Adam Peters ever made since becoming our general manager. Don't be surprised if Kazmir Allen competes for one of those actual wide receiver spots, not only as a returner, but as somebody that can contribute on offense as well for our new franchise quarterback. Now, moving on, the Washington Commanders have also announced their offseason workout dates, the early ones. We're not talking about training camp, but everything before training camp, we now know. The first day of practice is April 2nd, which is only 4 days away. So, hey, man, in 4 days, we're about to start getting some interesting news about everybody reporting, especially like free agents and the coaching staff coming together to really start to break down what their plans are for the draft, with like scheme-wise. They're about to start having a lot of meetings and kind of going over what the plan for this season is, especially this offseason. Then we have voluntary minicamp, April 22nd through 24th. Again, another date that's before the draft. We have 2 separate workout and off-season sessions that are even before the draft. So voluntary minicamp, whoever pulls up, and I'm expecting with the new regime that I hope that as many people pull up as possible so that we can finally get to know each other and see each other face to face. I'm pretty sure Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu haven't even necessarily seen each other in person yet since they've signed to the Commanders. And I just feel like this is a good opportunity for everybody to meet each other, to meet the positional coaches and everything, and see what we're trying to do scheme-wise. This is a good time to hand everybody the playbook on offense and defense, and even special teams-wise, get an idea of what we're trying to build there as well, especially with all of the new rules. We need to get down on that early. I already did a full breakdown on all of the rule changes. It was like an over 40-minute video, and special teams is one of the biggest rule changes, and I feel like that, along with like the swivel hip drop tackle, those will be some good times to really start breaking that down. But of course, they're going to keep regurgitating that throughout the entire offseason, including after the draft. We have our OTA offseason workouts as well. That's May 14th through 15th, then May 17th, then May 21st through 22nd, then May 24th, then June 4th through 5th, and then June 7th. That's your OTA offseason workout schedule. I'm super excited about that. And up to this point, all the way up through June 7th, every workout, every meeting, every time that the Commanders come together, technically everything has been voluntary. Then we have mandatory minicamp as of June 11th through the 13th, and I'm really excited by that, man. That's going to be the first time that we probably have 100% of the roster, even though, again, with the new regime and Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, everybody being excited, new face of the franchise quarterback, new everything. I don't think y'all understand how new this team is from just as of 5 months ago. Everything is different. I mean, you got to remember that even Josh Harris wasn't the owner up to this point in 2023 last year. Like, he bought the team sometime in like July. So by the time we get to mandatory minicamp June 11th, it will be new literally everything. Literally everything. Terry McLaurin and Jonathan Allen are one of the very few people that are still here from last year, roster, coaching staff, front office wise, anything. So I'm saying all of that to say that I wouldn't be surprised if we have huge turnouts for even a lot of the voluntary parts of this off-season workout program, because I think everybody's going to want to buy in. Everybody's going to want to hurry up and as many chances they can actually get, because I'm pretty sure a lot of players are so excited that they wish we could practice more. But of course, according to the NFLPA, we're only allowed to practice a certain amount of times. There's certain restrictions there. So we're limited to these dates, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of players, a lot of coaches, a lot of the front office guys are just super excited about this new era of the Commanders, the new era of burgundy and gold. And they're just like, man, I just can't wait to participate in anything we got going on. So again, I would not be surprised if we have like 100% turnout to even some of these off-season workout days, even some of the voluntary things, even before we get to the mandatory mini camp starting June 11th. Would not be surprised at all. I don't expect it, because these are grown men, and if it's not mandatory, some people may not show up, even though a lot of the time it is kind of like strongly advised and requested. But we've seen guys skip those and end up still coming in to start and play well for us. Not everybody though, because we did have some guys like Chase Young skipping them at times, and you see how that turned out. And lastly, before we get up out of here, the Washington Commanders have officially announced their 2024 draft party, which will be 11 a.m. Saturday, April 27th at the National Harbor Waterfront. Is presented by SeatGeek and all of those guys. Now, of course, this is day 3 of the NFL draft. So rounds 4 through 7, make sure you pull up and go to the National Harbor, because it's going to be very fun. I mean, everybody that I've heard that went there absolutely loved it last year. A lot of people loved it that went last year, and I'm expecting this to really be a movie this year, especially because, first of all, the first one went really well. And so that's just going to build momentum going into the second one. After people seeing how successful and how great that experience was, even more people are going to go the second time just from that alone. Secondly, there's so much more hope this time around with this entirely new front office, new coaching staff, new roster, everything. So there's just excitement from that alone building. And then third, since this is specifically on day 3 of the draft, by then, after 3 rounds of drafting for the Commanders, and as of right now, we have 6 top 100 draft picks in those first 3 rounds, the first 2 days, we'll have a new face of the franchise quarterback and many more impactful projected starter type of guys, like maybe a starting left tackle, maybe a new edge rusher, a new corner that we're excited about, a new tight end and or receiver. You never know. So I'm expecting that to add even more excitement. If I'm able to get out there to do that, I will. I doubt it though. I highly doubt it, because you know I typically stream all of the rounds. Make sure you remember that too. Make sure you go ahead and set your calendar. I will be live streaming for rounds 1 through 5 at the very least, and depending on how fun the draft is, how many draft picks we have, I may end up streaming all the way through round 7 as well. So make sure you pull up. But y'all know I'm definitely live streaming day 1, and I'm of course live streaming rounds 2 and 3 on day 2, and at the very least I'm live streaming rounds 4 and 5 on day 3. But also make sure you pull up to the National Harbor. So while you're at the National Harbor, just make sure you have my YouTube live stream pulled up on your phone. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you're enjoying both, but make sure you focus on enjoying that National Harbor thing, because I've heard so many great things about it. I definitely want to get out there. If they continue to do that, like, and make that an every year thing, an annual thing, I definitely want to make sure I pull up to at least one of them sometime soon within the next couple of years. But yeah, man, make sure you stiff arm that like button. That's the end of this video. Stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button, so you get notification each and every time I release an informative, opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned, because again, I have so much content on the way. I've just been super busy, but once I'm less busy outside of YouTube, I'm going right back to 2-3 videos a day. I have so many ideas. It's not a lack of ideas and content. I have so many tabs and windows saved of so many different fun ideas. I still have to do draft film sessions for a lot of the players before the draft even gets here. So stay tuned. I have so much content on the way. I just gotta sit down and get to it. So make sure y'all stay tuned. I really appreciate y'all. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about us signing Olamide Zaccheaus. Are you higher on him than I am, or are you lower on him than I am? I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. And then also let me know how you feel about the potential offseason workout dates. Do you feel like we're going to have a huge turnout to even the voluntary sessions with a lot of the new free agents that we're bringing in and players being excited about this new era of the Commanders? And also let me know if you plan on going to that day 3 draft party provided by Josh Harris and the Commanders at the National Harbor. I really appreciate y'all, man. Make sure y'all stay tuned. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.